Imagine you're at a party and you're all dressed up, but the moment you're in the party, you're having fun, and somebody walks by and says, "Man, what are you even wearing? It looks ugly." I mean, nothing actually happens at that moment. You rub it off. But then, when you are alone, coming back home after the party, it keeps lingering in your head. Why did somebody say something like that? You look at the mirror and you take a look, you say, I think I feel good, but why did the other person say something? All these thoughts keep running in your head. In fact, it runs so much in your head that next day when you take a shower and you open your wardrobe, you're now trying to choose clothes in which, quote unquote, you won't look ugly. So it's not about what the other person said, it's something that triggered in you. So recently, I was having a discussion with my mother, and some family member had said something about her, and she came to know about it. And she was actually feeling very bothered. Like it was bothering her so much that in just daily life, she was feeling uh, less present. She was feeling upset. She was feeling sad. And see, we cannot control as to what the other person can say, will say, or something like that, right? So we sat with that question, and another question came to our mind is to why whatever was said is impacting her so much. And the answer to this actually opened a new learning which I'm sharing with you in this video. The answer was it was touching her ego. Now, most of us confuse ego with something else which is called as pride. We confuse ahankar with ghamand. Whenever we think about ego, we think about a person saying that I have $1 million, or I am better than others, or I have achieved this great feat, or something like that. But actually, there is a separate word for it called ghamand or pride. But ego or ahankar is actually a very, very deep thing below this. It's very subtle. It's the I-ness in this statement itself. It's the feeling of this is me, this is my room, this is my mobile, this is my speaker, this is my setup. And the moment this I attaches itself with anything, anything that touches that affects us. So you must have observed this, right? That if somebody says something about your work, somebody criticizes your work, you feel hurt. Or if somebody is more superior, more rich than you feel inferior. Or on the other hand, if you're doing better than somebody else, you feel more successful, you feel more ahead in life. Why? Have you thought about it? Because there is an I attached to all these ranges of emotion. And the moment that I compares either keeping you higher or keeping you lower, your emotions go up and down with this. So Osho actually has a very beautiful story which explains this scenario, right? So there is a village, and in that village there is a house which is on fire. And there are some villagers standing. A man comes running by and he's crying his eyes out looking at the house burning. Everybody looks at him and says, like, why is this person crying? And the person is crying saying that this is my house, it's on fire. There were a few villagers which knew him. They came to him and said that, hey, don't worry, you don't have to cry, because your son had actually put this house on sale, and they have actually sold this house. The man immediately stopped crying and he started laughing, thinking that it's not his problem anymore. But then, after a few moments, the son comes in, and the son is crying. And the father is looking at him that, why are you crying? These people just told me you had already sold this. You had already sold this home. He said, yes, I had put it on market, and the deal hands were shaken, but the deal was not signed yet. And what happens to the father? He starts crying again. So in this story, if you observe, nothing changed. The house that was still there, that was still burning. In fact, it had even burned more during this time. But the father, when he considered it was his house, he was sad, he was crying. The moment he considered it was a sold house, it was not his house, he was happy, he was chill, he was just looking at it. But then again, once he found out that, once he identified with the house again, he started feeling all those sadness and heaviness emotions again. Nothing had changed. The house was still the same and it was still on fire. So actually, if you see your problems, the suffering that we go through, the comparisons, it's because of this I. Without this I, the comparison, the emotion doesn't exist. And this is why actually it becomes a bit more difficult to let it go as well. It gets a bit more difficult to go beyond this ego, because it also makes you feel great. Because when you look at people who are less successful than you feel more successful. You look at people who are less rich than you feel richer. So the comparison is sometimes working in your favor as well. And some part of you actually wants it to stay because of the way it makes you feel. And that's why it's a bit more difficult to go beyond it. And the interesting thing is, as we become more aware of this, right? As we are on this path to become more conscious, we become more aware, the ego actually doesn't disappear. It actually becomes more subtler. So you might come to a stage where you don't have that pride. Like you're not saying that I have this much amount of money. You're saying it as a matter of fact. You're not attaching yourself as an identity, but you're saying it as a matter of fact. But at that time, the ego still stays, and it gets a bit more subtler. For example, if you're doing a spiritual practice, if you're meditating, it may say, I meditate every day. And what actually you're using all these spiritual practices to increase your awareness and go beyond ego starts fueling the ego itself. That I meditate every day. I wake up early every day. I fast every Ekadashi. So whatever you are actually using starts fueling the ego back again. That's why actually my teacher says that whenever we are doing a spiritual practice or anything, do it for yourself. Don't share it with anyone. Don't show it to the world, because the moment you start identifying with these practices also, the ego subtly comes back, the ahankar comes back, the ins comes back. Now, one thing that we have to understand in all of this is that ego is not a villain. It's a faculty of the mind, right? It's nothing more than that, nothing less than that, and nothing more than that. It's like a knife, it's a tool. The same knife can be used to cut vegetables and make delicious food, or end somebody's life. Similarly, ego is a tool. The problem is that we are being unconsciously used by it. If we consciously use it, it is very helpful. So, for example, in my work, I am a consultant to my clients. Now, if I'm preparing a strategy, if I'm taking responsibility for some work, I actually utilize that ego and tell my clients that I am responsible for making this happen. I am responsible to see this through. I am responsible for this project. There, I'm putting on the consultant hat. Along with that, I'm putting on the ego. But the moment the cap goes away, the ego has to go away with it. But most of the time, we cannot do it. We are not that aware. It's difficult for us to do it. And what happens is that instead of using it, we end up getting used by it. And that's why our suffering happens, and the emotions go up and down, up and down, up and down. Now, the real shift is not trying to remove the ego itself. That task by itself is very difficult. It's actually, whenever that I-ness comes, it's being aware to observe it, right? So instead of taking in the storm itself, you take a step back and start looking at the storm. For example, if you're feeling hurt, we say, I am feeling hurt. I am comparing for the jealousy or happiness to come, either ways, or I am getting jealous. Instead of reacting to it immediately, take a step back and start observing it. And in this observation, something changes. The moment you see the ego, you no longer are fully inside it. We often say that I don't have ego, I don't have this and that, but actually what we mean is that we don't have pride, but the sense of I-ness still persists. Ego is much deeper, the very sense of this I. So the journey is not to fight it, but the journey is to become more aware of it in real life, because the more we see it, the less it controls us. And maybe just becoming aware of this, how subtle ego is actually the first step towards dissolving it.